River City Girls has exploded in popularity to a degree I never expected it to. When the announcement trailer dropped back in early July, I expected it to be a modest success in the vein of many of WayForward's other revivals of classic properties a la Double Dragon Neon or Contra 4. What I did not expect was for the game to hit trending on Twitter. 4th place if I'm remembering correctly. Fan art, cosplay, commentary, and praise is still flooding Twitter at the time I'm working on this video. River City Girls has apparently struck a chord with the internet and has propelled the Kunio-kun series into a spotlight it has never enjoyed in the West. Not even the NES cult classic that inspired this new game has reached this level of popularity. There are people out there who don't even realize that River City Girls is in fact not an original IP. That's how insanely popular this has gotten. And from everything I've heard thus far, the game deserves the praise it has gotten. Which is exactly why I'm about to criticize a game I haven't even bought yet. For those of you who are new to my channel, which I'm going to assume is a fair amount of you based on my small sub count and usual view count of about 4. I don't actually enjoy negativity, I try to avoid it, which is why this video may not be what you think it is. Yes, I am going to criticize the ending, but in all honesty this is more of an excuse for me to talk at length about a subject I've wanted to cover on this channel for a while. But I'm not an idiot and I know most of you just want to know why I'm bashing on something popular, and I'll get to that as soon as I can. But in order to make my point, I'd like to cover some history first.
Huh? What is it, Kyoko?
River City Girls is the latest in a long line of games spanning all the way back to the 80s with a game some of you might know as Renegade, which is actually a westernized version of a Japanese game called Nekketsu Koha Kunio-kun, a game which is in fact the great-granddaddy of all modern-style beat-em-up games. Before this, the majority of beat-em-ups functioned more like traditional side-scrollers with enemies that died in one hit, like Kung Fu or Vigilante. Kunio-kun introduced a 3D playing field and much tougher enemies that required extensive beatdowns in order to defeat them, as well as special moves like wall jumps and various grabs, which is an addition to the genre that can usually be found in any modern brawler. The franchise has a lot of interesting history behind it. The creator of the Kunio-kun series, Yoshihisa Kishimoto, based it off of a mixture of his love of Bruce Lee movies and his own teenage life, in which he says he got into fights almost every day. The original arcade game would receive a follow-up, not in the form of another Kunio adventure, but in the form of a little game you might have heard of called Double Dragon, which spawned its own franchise. The American adaptation, Renegade, would receive its own series of sequels by Ocean Software. These games really don't have much to do with the franchise, though. And a new Kunio adventure would appear in arcades eventually, but rather than a side-scrolling beat-em-up, it was the beloved arcade classic, Super Dodgeball. However, the series is most well known by its third entry, Downtown Nekketsu Monogatari, released as Street Games in Europe, and in America as River City Ransom. In River City Ransom, you play as Alex and Ryan. Ryan's girlfriend Cindy has been kidnapped by Slick, who controls all of the gangs in River City. Now you, as Alex and Ryan, must traverse River City, all the while beating up thugs, stealing their milk money, and eating lots of food in order to grow strong and kick more ass. River City Ransom is unquestionably the most well-known facet of this franchise. Yeah, Super Dodgeball was popular, and a few people have fond memories of Nintendo World Cup and Crash and the Boys Street Challenge, but make no mistake, if you were to show the average American NES fan a sprite from the Kunio-kun series, they'd most likely recognize it as River City Ransom, even if they've never played the game before. The original River City Ransom has actually formed its own sub-series within the Kunio-kun franchise, sometimes known as the Downtown Nekketsu series. First up was Downtown Special Kunio-kun no Jirigeki Daiozen Ninjugo, sometimes called Techno Samurai, an NES follow-up to the original Downtown Nekketsu, in which Kunio and his friends play out a period piece set in feudal Japan. In other words, this is for all intents and purposes River City Ransom 2, which is a title sometimes instead attributed to the SNES game, Shodai Nekketsu Koha Kunio-kun, which is actually more intended as a sequel to the original arcade game, but we'll get into some more of that later. Downtown Nekketsu Monogatari itself has been remade a couple of times, with ports to the PC Engine and Sharp X1000 computers, a full-fledged remake on Game Boy Advance, and another newer remake on 3DS sold in the West under the title of River City Rival Showdown. Jidekeki got its own 3DS sequel, and now there's the completely original River City Knights of Justice, a medieval-themed take on the series. And that's just for the original Japanese Kunio-kun series. In the West, River City Ransom continued to inspire many games, among which include the 2007 TMNT GBA game, and the legendarily unavailable Scott Pilgrim vs. the World the game. But there's one particular subject of interest to talk about here, and that is, of course, River City Ransom Underground. For those of you who wanted a true blue sequel to the River City Ransom you grew up with, this is the best you're going to get. Developed by Canadian developer Conatus Creative, this is an officially licensed follow-up to that original localized NES game, featuring the characters and references that most Western players are familiar with, as well as lots of new stuff too. If River City Girls is too anime for you, then you might want to give this a shot. I guess. I haven't actually played it yet. And I haven't played River City Girls yet either. Not because I don't want to. The game looks great. It's mostly a matter of me not having the $30 to toss at it. I'll probably buy it someday, maybe during a sale, or maybe I'll miraculously have $30 to spare. I don't know. But even without playing it, I have a criticism. A criticism of the story. That's right, we're finally to the part of the video you clicked on it for. Now, the story is almost never important to a beat-em-up, and is usually best fed to the player in short, easily understood bursts, like the opening of Double Dragon, for example. But it's that very motivation that I'm criticizing here. Not the goal of the game, mind you. I'm actually surprised it's taken this long to get a beat-em-up that reverses the classic damsel in distress scenario. It's such a simple and, dare I say, cliché concept that I'm surprised I haven't seen it done before. No, what I'm criticizing here is the fact that the whole quest turns out to be kinda pointless. Warning, the spoilers begin now. If you don't wish to be spoiled, turn the video off now. The game begins with Kyoko and Misako in detention in Neketsu High School, when Kyoko sees on her phone that Riki and Kunio have been kidnapped. And so, the girls leave detention to go beat up a ton of thugs, steal their milk money, eat lots of food in order to grow strong and kick ass, so that they may traverse River City to save their boyfriends. Sound familiar? This is what the trailer advertised after all, and was quite frankly a major selling point of the game. Who doesn't want to play a game about saving their dumbass boyfriends from thugs? Sounds friggin' sweet. So, of course, the ending of the game is a joke. This isn't inherently a problem, of course. As a matter of fact, the original River City Ransom ended in a joking manner too. Ryan's girlfriend Cindy has been locked in a room of the school for the entire game, unable to leave. You fight wave after wave of enemies, grind for hours to get cash so you can power up and buy better techniques, and when you finally get to her, instead of heading home now that she's saved, she instead goes to resume the shopping spree she had apparently been kidnapped from. I assume this is the vibe WayForward was going for here, and I'm going to assume the best because, quite frankly, the folks who made this game are clearly just as much of not only Kunio-kun fans, but fans of Technos Japan as I am. The game is absolutely littered with references to other games in the series, franchise lore, and even just other games released by Technos. Just for a few of the references that I'm aware of, you've got extensive references to Double Dragon, Neon in particular, with characters like Billy, Jimmy, Marion, Abobo, Burnov, Linda, and Skullmageddon making appearances. The angels that leave your characters when you're defeated are a clear callback to downed players in Super Dodgeball. The guys in tiger masks are a reference to the final bosses of Neketsu Kakuto Densetsu. And probably my favorite obscure Technos reference I've seen thus far, there's a shop owner in the game that bears a suspicious resemblance to the character Bolova from the Combat Tribes, a beat-em-up released by Technos in 1990. Good on you for remembering that game. So, I don't fault WayForward for not understanding the source material because I think they totally do. I just think they had their priorities messed up with this ending. Speaking of the ending, let's talk about it. After beating up several bosses throughout the game, including familiar faces like Mizuzu, Yamada, Abobo, and new characters like Noise and Hibari, and finally reached the final boss, Sabuko, who is herself a new character that references Sabu, the final boss of Renegade. As a matter of fact, she's Sabu's daughter. Jeez, I hope he treats her better than he treats his sons. Beating Sabuko quite literally slams you into the ending of the game, when the girls fall through several stories of building and inexplicably survive to find themselves in a bathhouse, where Kunio and Riki have been the entire time. This is where the game loses me, as your entire quest becomes pointless with the revelation that Kyoko and Misako may have in fact been the crazy stalker exes the entire time. It's not that I don't get how this could be funny, I just don't think the joke quite lands here. To be honest, I was expecting Kunio and Riki not to actually need rescuing from the original trailer. Not because of some sort of macho BS, but because it's an obvious twist for an obviously comedic game to take. But the part that really rubs me the wrong way is the fact that the ending kinda paints you, the player, as a bad person, helping two crazy stalker chicks to find the boys they've been harassing. This is not a satisfying ending. As a matter of fact, to me, this whole ending feels like it would be a gigantic middle finger for spending so much time on the game. You go through the whole game believing you're on an epic quest to rescue your boyfriends, only to be told that they're not really your boyfriends and you're just creepy and obsessive. I mean, really, is that satisfying to you? But there's more, and this is more relevant to me as a Kunio fan. If that doesn't matter to you, you can probably just turn the video off now. I should mention there is a secret boss. I mentioned Sabu earlier, and there are statues around the town that you can destroy of him, and I am led to believe that when you destroy all of them, the true boss appears, in the form of classic Kunio-kun characters Hasebe and Mami. For those of you who've played the original River City Ransom, Hasebe and Mami are Roxy and Cindy, and their roles honestly weren't changed that much during localization. Throughout the game, there's a running gag where Hasebe and Mami bother Misako and Kyoko, since both groups consider themselves to be Kunio and Riki's significant others. And this final boss battle serves to settle the feud once and for all. But beating the final boss doesn't actually change the ending in any meaningful way. If anything, it kinda made it worse for me, with this exchange of dialogue.
Are you crazy? They barely remember you!
Yeah, you guys dated them for like one 16-bit game.
It wasn't even released in the USA!
Talk about obscure.
That one 16-bit game is Shin Niketsu Koha Kunio-kun, a game that is clearly the other big Kunio inspiration for River City Girls, since that is the only other game in the franchise where the girls are playable characters. Shin Niketsu is set after the events of the original Renegade, and is even sometimes known as Renegade 2 to some people. It's supposedly set before River City Ransom, which does make sense, but I have my doubts and theories about how the whole Kunio timeline lines up anyway. Anyway, in this game, Kunio and Riki are framed for a hit and run by imposters, and are sent to juvie. Knowing that they've been framed, they break out and go on the run to solve this mystery and clear their names. This involves kicking a lot of ass. This also involves their girlfriends tagging along as playable characters. Unlike the River City games, Shin Niketsu is a linear, story-driven beat-em-up with plenty of dialogue and not much to do off the beaten path. And unlike the majority of the Kunio-kun franchise, the story is actually rather serious, even if the fan translation is laughably crude. Having a serious story is actually kind of a trend for Kunio games directed by Kishimoto. They all tend to be much more serious in nature than the rest of the series. This can be seen in the graphics, music, and stories within each game. Heck, even the cartoonishly styled Bangai Rantohen involves Kunio's friend Hiroshi being put in the hospital for 3 months after defending a classmate from being harassed. And Shin Niketsu is way darker than that. About halfway through the game, Kunio learns that his imposter is a man named Ken, who might actually be the younger brother he never knew he had, and that he's been adopted by Sabu and raised to hate Kunio. Determined to put a stop to this, Kunio and friends eventually track down Sabu and confront him. And that's when this happens. Both of the girls are shot by Sabu in order to distract the boys while Sabu and Ken get away, with everyone except for Sabu being absolutely shocked by this development. What follows is a scene of the boys desperately begging Misako and Kyoko to stay alive long enough to get to a hospital before the girls fall unconscious. And Kunio and Riki are left heartbroken and understandably pissed off by this series of events. As a result, Kunio and Riki track down Sabu and Ken for a final showdown. Sabu then shoots his own adopted son, as you saw earlier, who before dying reveals that he was never Kunio's brother and was simply used as a tool by Sabu. And as revenge for all the wrongs Sabu has inflicted upon them, Kunio and Riki commit the only confirmed murder I know of in the series. They beat Sabu to death and leave him to burn in his villa. One 16-bit game, with likely traumatizing events in it for the main characters. Of course, this whole complaint is likely irrelevant given that River City Girls clearly takes place in its own universe, with a different tone, characters, and even Misako and Kyoko have altered personalities. Like I said, that whole thing for me is more of a personal gripe, but in general, it really does bug me how the ending of the game makes everyone look like an ass. Mami and Hasebe are assholes to you for the entire game. Kunio and Riki basically behave like douchebags and barely remember the girls. And you're a creepy stalker who beat down countless people in pursuit of your deluded obsession. It's almost like Way Forward saw the River City Girlfriend Dorkly Bit skit and thought that would be a hilarious ending to their game.
Oh, barf!
Oh my god, what a psycho, right?
But in reality, the joke falls flat and has already left more than a few players confused and unsatisfied. Maybe even insulted. I can't even imagine what it's like for somebody who ain't familiar with the series at all. All of this said, River City Girls is far from a bad game. Many people are already naming it their game of the year and one of the best brawlers in years. Furthermore, the game has brought a genre I love dearly back to relevancy, and has boosted the Kunio-kun series into the Western mainstream and pop culture like never before. And the series shows no signs of stopping. A brand new entry in the series was announced shortly after River City Girls dropped, titled Stay Cool Kobayashi-san, a River City story, co-directed by Kishimoto with a brand new graphical look. I'm extremely happy that River City Girls exists, even if I haven't played it. But even if I'm happy, that ending really does personally feel like a giant middle finger.